Okay, it's day 123, subject 4. This is James Miller. All right. James or Jim?
Jim.
First thing to do is look right straight in the camera and just simply state your name.
Jim Miller.
Second take, my name is Jim Miller.
My name is Jim Miller.
City and state.
Parowan, Utah.
Type of corruption is what?
I have an issue with the local sheriff's department. They released some improper firearms. They were released to the public. And then since they came back and tried to redeem them, and there was no restitution involved in redeeming these firearms, I felt that it wasn't right and that they were violating our constitutional rights.
Any court actions involved?
I took this as far as I could take it, affordable, to the court system, and I have documentation and stuff on that. I dealt with the ATF on it. It just carried it as far as I could afford to take it.
All right. Right in the camera, let's start with law enforcement abuse.
As far as the law enforcement here, I don't think there's any...
I'm sorry. Just say law enforcement abuse, then we'll go into the story in just a second.
Okay. Law enforcement abuse.
And then violation of constitutional rights.
Violation of constitutional rights.
And was ATF, did they do the right job, or is government corruption?
Well, I feel that the ATF didn't follow procedure properly. They feel that they did, but they tried intimidating us and threatening us and all that. So it went on for quite some time, and I took it as far as I could legally. The law enforcement abuse here, there's no watchdog over it. They're just open to make their own cases, and it's a numbers deal.
Let me stop in a second. Say, if you will, my name is Jim Miller from Cedar City, Utah, and I'm a victim of law enforcement abuse and violation of my constitutional rights.
My name is Jim Miller. My constitutional rights, I feel, have been abused by the local law enforcement in Cedar City. I was a resident of Parowan.
All right. Occupation?
Retired now.
Okay. What's your favorite occupation you have?
I own my own business. I was a tow company operator.
You would just say tow company operator directly in the camera?
Tow company operator.
And now retired.
Now retired.
Saw an interesting tow company operation yesterday. We were filming at the family court in Las Vegas, and they refused to let us film even on the public sidewalk. We had to go across the street to where there's a McDonald's and a Blockbuster. There was a guy standing, when I drove over there to park, because there was no parking place at the family courthouse, I see a boot and a tow truck and Blockbuster. So I said, well, I'm not going to park there. So I go over to McDonald's, and here's a tow truck. And there's a guy standing out there. He's a permanent employee of the tow truck operator. And he goes and he sits inside McDonald's, and if they don't go in to buy something, he calls the tow truck and they come and tow him off.
Exactly. I had a friend of mine that just had that happen to him.
Now, that's as family unfriendly as it gets. I went up to the manager of McDonald's and said, do you know this is going on? And she says, well, I believe the owner authorized it. I'm going, you got to be kidding. I don't think corporate, how about putting a young man out there with paying $30, $40 a day and let him say, oh, I'm sorry, you need to park somewhere else, but there's nowhere to park. So if you're going to lose your children, what do? You park, then they tow your car off, then you can't afford to pay it, and they sell your car. Big system we got. All right, would you hold up the release? Jim, I've asked you to sign a release, have you?
Yes.
Thank you very much. All right, did you prepare a statement to Congress, or you just want to kind of tell the story?
Just tell the story.
Okay. Start off with your name and where you're from and go into it. I know yours is a little more involved, so go for it.
Okay. Jim Miller from Parowan, Utah. Mine's on an issue with the Sheriff's Department selling some firearms to the public. Had one of the firearms that we purchased. They come and tried to redeem them. Didn't want to give any restitution for the firearm. In other words, if you're out $1,800, you're out $1,800 that you paid for it. They were said to be illegal M14s. They released 16 of them to the public. They came to me and said that I had to surrender it to them, which at that time I didn't because I didn't have it present. I went to the ATF in Virginia and started a process because I felt that they were violating my constitutional rights to own this because they said I couldn't own it, and took it as far as I could through the court system and everything. They redeemed the receiver, which I have a receipt for. So the whole thing is there's no justification for the law enforcement here as far as anyone telling them what they need to do to correct their problem. They strong arm, they abuse, they fabricate, and they retaliate.
Right. You're using some terms I'm not familiar with. In terms that, what's that, the show? Well, yeah, or so that there's a jury show where I think the guy said, the defense attorney said, well, even a third grader could understand that. What is redeem?
Well, and redeeming is taking back or, forfeiting or whatever.
Right. So they took your guns.
Correct.
All right. And they call that redeeming?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. All right. So these are M14s?
Correct.
And you purchased how many?
One.
At a cost of how much?
We got about $1,800 in it.
And so local law enforcement came and took it from you.
Correct.
And did they have a warrant?
No.
They just showed up and said, we want your gun?
The local law enforcement presented me with a letter. They presented me with a phone call stating I had to surrender or they would turn me into the ATF. Well, being from the area and seeing the issues that I have, I didn't trust them. So I went to the ATF myself and started the process, which the ATF came out and worked with me, worked with the Sheriff's Department, and that's when they took the receivership or receiver for rendering.
And was it legal to have an M14?
As far as I knew it was, as far as they did, but they said because it was fully automatic, it's not. And I wanted to get it legalized then, but they wouldn't legalize it.
There's a guy with a really famous case in Washington State. He was a firearms instructor. I'll have to get you his name. They claimed that he had something that could have been converted into something that would be like a machine gun or whatever. And it was a complete setup. So some guys come out there and pretend to be attending one of his classes, and then they grab it. He's been fighting for like 12 years. It's continuously been dismissed, and they keep like recharging it or whatever, and they're just going to harass him for the rest of his life. All right, so they took it.
The receiver.
And then what happened?
And then I started taking it through the court process and took it as far as I could, that I could afford, and that's as far as it went.
Right, so did you file a civil action?
I filed with the Supreme Court.
Okay.
And then it went to the United States Supreme Supreme Court. It was with the state, then the United States Supreme Court, and that's where it was left.
So it was taken to the U.S. Supreme Court as a petition for writ of certiorari or mandamus? Or do you know?
I don't know.
It was an appeal of what happened in the...
Correct.
Yeah. So they only look at one out of 100 of those. It has to be important.
Well, this has some issues.
Like the Second Amendment isn't important.
I don't know why they came to redeem these arms at the time. I suspect, and I'm probably wrong or right or whatever, I don't know. Nobody knows except them, is when the Fast and Furious went down. They collected all these weapons up for it. These are the type of weapons that they were collecting. So I'm thinking maybe...
So you're part of Fast and... You're just on the fringe of Fast and Furious.
It's a good possibility time frame and everything, yes.
So your gun's gone, your money's gone.
No restitution. Have a nice day.
And you've been dismissed. Did they even get an opinion at the state Supreme Court, or did they just...
No.
They dismissed it or denied it, or...
Just wanted to take it further and more money.
Before this happened to you, did you believe that we had a fair and honest government and we had justice and constitutional rights?
Well, we have constitutional rights, but they don't get followed. It's a total violation. I've seen a lot of that when I was in the military. In the military, you don't have constitutional rights. It's a different system there. I don't know, the new military, it might be different, but in my era, it wasn't. But you try to make the best of it. I mean, you know, everybody can't be perfect and everything, so you try to put it together and go with it. But when you get violated, you get violated.
Now, when they took the gun, did they have any order authorizing them to do that?
No, they just said, we're taking it.
Just took it.
You have to surrender or you're going to jail.
ATF is Ace Hardware.
But I did also make them give me a receipt for it, so I can still continue the...
All right, anything else to tell about the story? I know you've got some documents. I would love to get, if they're extras, I'll take them. If not,
I don't have any extras at the time. I have some, but no, and I just feel that led on to other problems. There's a couple monopolies here of the government system that's not proper, should be looked into, but nobody will look into it and they won't do anything about it. There's too much nepotism and favoritism. And
you want to identify those?
well, that goes into regards with my towing business that I had, and then Wayne Hall here can follow up on that. He's got his complaint with it or issue or whatever.
Okay. All right, anything else you want to say?
No, I should do it.
You want to define Lawless America for me?
Well, you guys probably take a lot of heat. It's tough to get the public to see what's out there. They're in denial. Somebody has to open the door and show them, and hopefully this is the road to it.
Well, I hope so. We got some big plans, but we
Yeah.
still got to reach a lot of eyeballs. All right, thanks. Oh, sorry, I forgot to ask.
I think the guns were, when you mentioned it was purchased from the sheriff.
No. Where'd you buy the guns?
From the sheriff's department. Well, I got them from a sheriff deputy, okay, who got it from the sheriff's department. They sold them at a fire sale, basically, to the deputies, and then got it from one of the deputies who's passed on actually now.
And was it the sheriff's department that came and took them from you, or police?
No, the sheriff's department started the investigation. I felt that they were corrupt about it, so that's why I went to the ATF with it. Because they threatened me with that, and I thought, you know what, You're gonna threaten me with it, I'm gonna go to open the door myself and make sure I get the right representation.
Did everybody else who got an M14 get it taken away?
They all got them taken away with no restitution.
Anything else?
That's what I was gonna
That's
say,
here.
the people that sold him the gun or who took the gun from him and didn't give him any money.
Right, no money was accounted for.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Weren't those guns transferred by the U.S. Army to the Sheriff's Department?
Yes, and I have documentation of that.
All right, so the U.S. Army delivers some guns to the Sheriff's Department. A sheriff's deputy sells you a gun. You pay good, hard-earned money for it. I'm going to get you to say this. And then they come and take your gun away and don't give you anything to the county.
What was it? It was an accounting. The Army, all of a sudden there was an accounting, which kind of coincides with the Fast and Furious. There was an accounting of where all these guns that went to law enforcement to be utilized, you know, because they could...
For their SWAT teams or whatever, and then they came in with the M16 and updated.
Take us through that just as a soundbite, just the ridiculousness of how this stuff traveled and what happened.
Well, the Sheriff's Department received these firearms prior sheriff back with the Ira Shopman administration. Then they since got the M16, which was more modern. So they had these in their vault, security room, wherever they kept them. Then they decided to release them to the deputies and sell them off to all their deputies. So they did this. A couple years after that fact, another administration, which is Mark Gower's administration now, they started trying to collect these weapons that they had sold and went around and asked everybody to surrender their weapons. So they collected them, but there was no restitution involved. So I wasn't going to give them my weapon until I got some kind of restitution, and then I was threatened with the ATF. So then I went to the ATF myself and started the process.